Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Infinite Winter first quarter roundtable. Um, Hope you've enjoyed the reading so far. Today on the call we have 5 out of 6 of the Infinite Winter guides. And so I'll let everybody just say a brief hi, introduce themselves. And I'm Mark, and I will be the moderator today. Um,
Hi everybody, this is Jenny. I'm one of your guides as well, and I manage the Erasing Infinite poetry blog.
Hi everyone, I'm Nathan. I'm another guide, and I also manage the Drawing on the Infinite project, where I draw a picture from Infinite Jest every day.
And I'm Ryan. I've got the Infinite Lego book that's out right now, and Letters to DFW blog that I haven't updated in a very long time.
And I will introduce Corey, who is there. She does the Infinite Jest color project, and is currently having a microphone issue. So she will be on in a muted sort of fashion today. And again, my name is Mark Flanagan. I have no art project that I manage. I'm the editor of a book review website called runspotrun.com, and I am the, I guess, agent provocateur behind this whole Infinite Winter sort of project. So, hopefully everybody's enjoying the reading so far. We are up at, as of last night, we're at page 284. I've had a wonderful time reading it with you guys. I actually couldn't help myself and started early in January, got to about this point and realized I wasn't having too much fun. And so what I did was I started over so that I could be back with you guys and talking about the same things you were. So let's kick it off. I'm gonna start with some questions for the other 4 guides. I'm going to start by talking about the challenge of reading Infinite Jest from the get-go, the initial push that it takes to get over the inertia of not really knowing what's going on. I know you guys have all read Infinite Jest before, but if you can recall, I'm curious, how did you get over that inertia? When did you get to the point where you really felt compelled to read some more? I'll take the question to Jenny.
Sure. So I first read Infinite Jest as part of Infinite Summer, and I kind of had the warning from somebody early on that like you just have to hang in there for the first 200 or 300 pages. So I knew, even when the parts were really difficult or confusing, that I should just kind of plow forward with the faith that somehow it would make sense. For me, it really clicked around, I think it was around like page 250 when Hal and Oren are having that conversation about himself's death. And, for me, like we don't get a lot of one-on-one conversations in the book. There's a lot of descriptions, a lot of details, and just kind of reading that one-on-one conversation, for me that really like encompassed kind of a lot of like humanity and sadness, and it was funny at the same time, and so that was the point where I said, yeah, I really love this book, and I'm going to keep going forward.
That's awesome. I love that part too. I particularly love the way that Wallace makes it such a real conversation by interjecting with the whole toenail thing all the time. And also that's hilarious, which I love. Nathan?
I don't know if I ever really felt it was a struggle at the beginning. I love books and films where not much happens anyway, or things don't quite make sense, but just things that create a mood. And I always found the Year of Glad scene, Hal's interview with the deans at Arizona, really intriguing. So like the questions I scribbled all over my book from that scene carried me through the Erdity scene waiting for his marijuana, which is a bit of a slog, I'll admit. to the rest of the book. So I found it difficult the first time, but never like it was a slog or I wasn't interested.
Excellent. There are probably some other readers like you. I wonder how many. I know that I've had a few people drop out already, people I invited to read it. So it's interesting the first time. Like Jenny, I read mine. My first time was in Infinite Summer, so having all these people reading together is a huge help. Ryan? Ryan? Ryan, are you staring at me blankly?
I think one may have just stuck his transmittable tableau on and gone and done something somewhere else.
I think you might be right. Okay. Corey, I suppose if you'd like to add something in the comments, we could do it that way. What do you think? In the chat? Two down, huh? Okay, well, in keeping us moving, Corey is maniacally typing, I think. I can't hear that, but there we go. You reminded me that Joelle's descriptions had a lot of color. Oh, yeah. Right. In that comment I mentioned the other day, when she's sitting in the chairs at Molly Notkins, it's amazing. I think that was one of the things that made me, yeah. Realized that I no longer needed to color tab to pay attention. Yeah, that's excellent. Well, I see Ryan joining us again, but I don't know if he's here. I'm going to go ahead and move on to my next question. Unless, no. Okay, so a big draw for me in Infinite Jest, one of the things actually that gets me through, that got me through early on is the humor, the sheer hilarity of it all. And sometimes it's funny, sometimes it is just outright blowing, milk out of your nose, hilarious, and sometimes it's just very subtly humorous, like in some of the, I guess the scenes that come to me are like the halfway house scenes. So the funniest thing for me so far has been the description, the fork description, the description of the fork incident at the halfway house. Those two passages from those two characters, the one who was stabbed with a fork and the other who did the stabbing, were so hilarious. I found myself laughing out loud in a public place. And then, of course, followed by looking around like Michael Pemulus. I'd love to hear what you guys think were the funny things that you found in the reading so far up to this point. I'm going to take a gamble and go to Ryan.
Yeah, sorry about that. My computer crashed and shut down right as you were going to me on that last question. Can you hear me now?
Yep, you're on.
Great. So funny parts. I think my favorite was the bricklayer incident with the insurance report. That was a lot of fun reading it. And the first time through reading it, again this time through, had a lot of fun. That's one of my favorite ones of the Lego series that I did, was creating that, and found the perfect mini figurehead with this very surprised, scared look on his face that just, I think, captured it perfectly.
Awesome. Yeah, that's a good part. I like that one too. Nathan.
I've just finished drawing a couple of my favorite jokes from Infinite Jest. The help wanted sign outside unit number 7 or number 4 next to Wenham House, and the grass grows by inches but it dies by feet sign. They just, I don't know why, but those crack me up.
Yeah, I'm with you. The help wanted sign one particularly I thought was very funny. And cruel, but funny. Jenny.
Yeah, I definitely have the help wanted sign on my list as well. I think that's one of the times I can remember like actually laughing out loud and having the same experience as you, Mark, where I'm like laughing on the train and then kind of like looking at people who have no idea why I'm laughing to myself. But I really appreciate kind of the more subtle things as well. I'm a big fan of Wallace's acronyms. Like I think UHID is hilarious every time. So I think there are some good laugh out loud moments, but also just these little kind of tiny things too that make me smirk as I'm reading it.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think so too. I wonder if Corey, do you have sound? No? Okay. If you want to type something in the comments while we go on to the next one into the chat, we can read it as it comes up each time probably. Okay, so here's, for me, a big bonus of having conceived of this and talked it up a lot around my friends and family is that I have a lot of people in my actual day-to-day life, like, you know, in real life, who are also reading the book, or purportedly, you know. Some of them I'm not sure if they all are, but I have a fair number of people who are reading it. I've had the opportunity to actually sit down in a cafe or in a restaurant with a couple different groups of people and just talk about Infinite Jest, which has been really cool. My wife also was going to read it, but that hasn't actually materialized yet. I think she started, but dropped it along the way. How about you guys? Have you had any folks you know that you brought in that you're enjoying reading it with, friends or family or what have you? Jenny?
I tried to convince my boyfriend to read it along with me, and he didn't because of grad school, and I think now he's probably wishing that he was reading the book because I'm talking about it so much, and he has no idea what I'm talking about. So there's that. My parents, God bless them, they try to support me in whatever endeavors I have, and you know, my mom asked me, "Is this a book that I would like?" And I thought, probably not. So they're there in spirit, if not necessarily reading along.
Awesome. Nathan?
Yes, down here in Australia, I don't know many people who are reading or have read it, but I think after years and years of nagging, I finally got my wife and my mother-in-law to read it. So I sit down with them and I bug them with a million questions, and then they bug me back with a million others about what's coming up in the book, and I dodge their answers very artfully.
The Artful Dodger.
Yeah.
How are they finding it? Are they liking it or frustrated?
It's interesting. They both say, "Oh, I absolutely hated this bit," and I'm like, "It's my favorite bit in the whole book. I don't know why you don't like that bit." But there are other bits that they like that I really like as well, like the Kate Gompert scene. I don't think I've met anyone who doesn't love that bit.
Yeah, it's good. Ryan?
Like I mentioned earlier, I threw it out to my students to read along with it, and I've got maybe one or two that they're a bit behind, but they're kind of slogging their way through it. And yesterday at school, I wore my Enfield Tennis Academy shirt, and a couple kids noticed it and caught the reference to it. But probably my favorite, one of my former students, she graduated last year, and I still keep in touch with her on Facebook and things. And she's been reading it, and she goes to a small, private, very conservative Christian college out here in Southern California, and she's kind of the rebel on campus, walking around with Infinite Jest, and I think she said she's had some conversations with one of her professors who saw her with a book in the cafeteria or something. So I thought that was really cool that it's kind of this, we'll talk maybe once a week, every couple of weeks or so, and kind of check in and, ask her how she's enjoying the book and stuff. So that's been really cool.
That is really cool. I think it's awesome that you have at least a couple students who have read it and a former student. How are the current students enjoying it?
I haven't had much of a chance to talk too much about it, but one of the kids that's reading it, he's kind of one of those not really outlier students, but not a real strong student, and it's been good just to see him kind of connect with this and really, he seems really excited about it, really interested in reading it. So that's been really good just to, see how it's, maybe helped him academically a little bit, or at least, one of these kids that really doesn't get very excited about much to actually be excited about something. So that's been really cool.
I think that's really neat. I think it's great when someone of any age really can find a book that really turns them on. I mean, the books have had, there have been powerful moments in my life that have been related to books. And there was also it's interesting to me, high school students reading the books as well, reading Infinite Jest, because it's just, there's so much in there, and it's, I think a lot would escape a high school student. However, there's a lot to latch onto as well. We have a group, the last I heard, it was a dozen or so of at a high school in Colorado, which I think is really neat that some student pulled together. Corey says, just drove my friend to the airport that hasn't read Infinite Jest. I was telling him about the Hal or toenail scene and how I was frozen like Hal. But about my post rating for next week, he said, well, write that. Maybe Infinite Winter will get him to read it this summer. Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Infinite Winter will get him to read it this summer. Yeah, that'd be good. The next thing I want to ask was, how do you guys find the time to read Infinite Jest? For me, it's in a lot of little places. I know we all have busy lives, and everybody's working on different projects. Ryan, how do you fit the reading in? Along.
It's definitely difficult. I went into it thinking I need to stay ahead to stay on track and on time and try to get started ahead, but best laid plans. And it's squeezing in half an hour, while dinner's cooking, or taking my daughter to karate class and sitting there reading it. And it's difficult, just like you said, the busyness. And I tell everybody the irony of being an English teacher is you spend your day teaching kids to read and write, yet you don't have time to read and write yourself. But it's been good. I've to kind of go back to the first question when I got cut off as well, that it's kind of like taking a trip to somewhere that's familiar, somewhere that you enjoy going, and just kind of seeing these scenes that kind of pop up along the way, and the smiles of sort of meeting old friends, so to speak, as you go through the book. So I think that's kind of helped keep me going. Getting back into the book, I'll open up to the first Don Gately scene and just smile that oh, here's Don again, and the Kate Gomperts and just all these different scenes that it's good to come back to them.
Awesome. Nathan, how about you?
Yeah, I think quite similar to Ryan. It's really an exercise in stolen moments here and there. I have to work pretty hard anyway to fit in like 20-30 minutes to do my drawing and post it each morning. So when I pick up the book to read my 75-ish pages a week for Infinite Winter, it's there are some days where I just kind of skim along the surface of the prose, getting the rhythm and some of the humor and just a general sense, which, having read it like 5 or 6 times or something, I've got the luxury to do. I have no idea how first-time readers are coping with fitting 75 pages a week around their own lives. So I salute everyone who's doing that.
Mm. Yeah, likewise. It's funny you talk about skimming. I actually just had a neighbor of mine ask me, how it was going and if I do any skimming. I had to tell him, no, I can't possibly do that. I mean, again, the last time I read it was 2009. That was 6 years ago. This is my second time reading it, and I find it's still so packed. And there are things that I just don't remember. And kind of greeting each one of those every time, almost every sentence has something in it that I'm like, oh yeah, remember that, or I take a note or something. I don't do any skimming, and reading Infinite Jest, it goes at, I don't know, a third. I go at a third the pace that I would go at a regular novel, an ordinary human novel. Jenny?
Yeah, I would say I'm the opposite. So my body is on a clock from waking up really early for work all the time. So that means I tend to get up early on the weekends at like 6 o'clock, some outrageous hour. And so what I found most effective is if I just get up and like read for an hour or 2 hours on a Saturday or Sunday and just kind of do it all in one chunk. I also have this kind of paranoia about being that person on the train who is reading Infinite Jest. So like I always see these tweets or like people take secret Instagram photos of people who are reading Infinite Jest in like public places and then like make fun of them. So I'm always afraid of like having the big book out in public and having people take secret photos of me or something.
That's hilarious. I wonder about that too, actually, when I pull the book out on the bus or something like that, and I go, is this one of those moments where people are looking at me going, oh, snob.
That guy. You're that guy.
Right, exactly. Or much
I had an instance like that a couple years ago. I was going back for the AP reading. I was getting off the bus at the hotel, and guy, ways in front of me had the big, paperback of Infinite Jest, and I don't think I ever actually caught up to him or talked to him or anything, but kind of the same thought. But at the same time, I was actually reading it, but brought it on my Kindle, so I was kind of the covert Infinite Jest reader, so no one would know.
You could have like a book cover.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah. I kind of figure probably most people aren't paying nearly as much attention to me as I think they are. Isn't there a quote?
Yeah, that people would stop worrying about what others think if they realize how seldom they do.
Exactly. That's me.
I think that was in the like Enid House, instructions and things, or the things you learn at Enid House section.
Yeah, one of my favorite sections.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk characters. Let's talk about your favorites. I'm not going to kick this one off. I want to hear what your guys' favorite characters are, who they are. First person, jump in.
Mario!
Whoa!
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Sound.
It was Mario. He got me in.
Hi, Corey.
Hi. So Mario is the best, and if I think some of you guys have noticed on Twitter, Nathan's drawing of Mario with is it called a Bolex on his head?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm really enchanted by Mario, and I always hope to be around people that will take me seriously but be able to laugh with me, and I think Mario is that person. Even, do you say Pemulus?
I don't know, man. I say Pemulus, but
Pemulus. Okay, that's when you realize, like, you read it in a certain way. I'm just seeing the letters. But yeah, he's even like up for Mario videotaping because he trusts that Mario will block it out. I think Dave actually just wrote about that in his post.
Yeah, during the urine thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool. And there's even
just a picture. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead. I'm not going to talk over you. You need to do a little talking.
Just to picture a drug dealer like believing that Mario's going to like fade out his face with peach squares is pretty telling about who Mario is.
Yeah, definitely. And there's this spot. There's this. God, in the piece that I just read at the end of this week's reading, when they're at PWTA, there's this bit where Mario, it gets into Mario's head, and he's thinking about how to get this shot right of them in the corridor, in the back corridor, in the dark, fading off in the distance. And then it says, there's this like spot that says, it's awesome because then it gets into Pemulus's head, and it says, Pemulus would tell him that to do it this way.
Right. Yeah.
And there's this awesome connection between those two characters.
Oh man, good reminder. That's good.
Yeah. All right, Jenny?
So it's tough. I tend to kind of like a good underdog, or maybe that's not really the right word. I like Orin. I like Pemulus. These characters that seem, I don't know, kind of oafish or jerkish even on the surface. Mostly because I think when you look into them, and especially like when you read, kind of Wallace's writings about their inner lives, like these are the people who are carrying around these like really complex inner lives, and like terrible things have happened to them in their past, and like a lot of times they're acting the way that they act because of all of the bad stuff that has happened to them, so it's kind of a compensation thing. So I tend to see characters like Orin and Pemulus as a little bit more human, I guess. Even though Pemulus can be kind of a caricature at times.
That's really interesting. Are you saying that there is writing outside of Infinite Jest about Orin's and Pemulus's inner lives?
No, I'm saying more, I think when you, like, if you do like kind of a close reading of Infinite Jest, and really pay attention to the details around those characters, you see, like, yes, they're behaving badly in certain sections of the book, but then you kind of read why and, like, what's going on in their psychological state, and I think at least I had a better appreciation or understanding of them.
Yeah, that's cool. It's interesting, because what's so great to me about the way Wallace builds characters is that he does it very slowly, gradually, little bits at a time are leaked out so that they kind of start to come into color very slowly, over the course of many, many pages. And it may be even in someone else's part, like it may be even in, Joelle Van Dyne's section where you learn a little snippet of something about Orin, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's really interesting.
Yeah, with Pemulus especially, I think, you get these little hints, right? Like him at the Port Washington tournament and he's sick. Or you get the details about how he has people spray the logos on his sticks because he can't get the free ones, and that's kind of a touchingly insecure moment, right?
Yeah. Awesome. Nathan?
Cool. I'm with Jenny 100% re Orin. He's one of my favorites this time around. But I think I've even surprised myself with this read. I'm really, really getting into Steepley and Marat especially. Firstly, I love his stoicism, but he's this guy who's so totally opaque, even to himself, that through his long overnight conversation with Steepley, you see him slowly start to understand parts of himself that he didn't even realize were there, which I find just fascinating. All-time favorite character, though, who is someone we've just met kind of in the Infinite Winter, is Joelle Van Dyne. I think it's because I identify with her to a large extent. She's kind of this almost pretentious person who spends a huge amount of time in her own head, and obviously thinks she's very smart, but she has these kind of issues with knowing or how is she as smart as she thinks she is, which is something Hal struggles with as well. And of course, Jim, J-O-Y.
Of course, Jim as another favorite character.
Yeah, he's kind of a character and kind of not a character. He's both there and not there, which is, I think, something I talked about in my last post.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I really like Joelle a lot as well. I haven't read the book 5 or 6 times at this point, but what we've seen so far up to the reading for this week. God, I love the her scene at Molly Notkins. It's just amazing. The way she comes out, and then of course her getting there and walking past the dealers at the storefront is just awesome.
Yeah. Well, it's really interesting. Sorry, Kyle, you go.
I was just going to quickly ask if that's the rainbow windshield scene, or if I'm giving something away. I forget.
I don't recall the rainbow windshield scene yet.
Like the mud on the taxi windows while she's walking.
She talks about taxis and JOI's ability to hail cabs from places like Wyoming.
Yeah. I'll find it. Go ahead. What were you going to say, Nathan?
I was going to say what really grabs me about that scene is that even though Joelle's in a lot of pain and she's obviously about to have too much fun and eliminate her own map, she just, through all the description of the smells and the colours and the textures and everything she's encountering, she just seems so electrically alive in those moments.
Yeah, in anticipation of too much fun.
Yeah.
I started wondering if that was how I perceived her, was mainly in that state, because whenever I would hear her described, like kind of how you were saying that something about Oren would come up within a description of Joelle, I think, like when a description of Joelle would come up in relation to Oren, I didn't like her nearly as much as in the moments that you're describing, Nathan, where she's like very visually aware. And so I can't tell if that's Oren's perception of her or if our perception of her is mainly before she's about to do drugs.
Yeah, and that's an interesting point in itself. I think I'm anticipating another one of Mark's questions here, that a lot of the perceptions we have of the female characters in Infinite Jest, Joelle and Avril and Kate, and a few other people are probably like 90% mediated by the male characters who are observing them. And this Joelle scene is a cool exception to that.
That's true.
Yeah, that's interesting, and right, you were anticipating that. We'll go on to that in a second. Let's get to Ryan and talk about his favorite characters first now.
I really like the Enid House characters, Don Gately in particular. It was actually, Infinite Jest was probably one of the later books of Wallace's that I'd read, but I'd been to the conference in Antwerp and talking to people on Wallace L. So I felt like I knew the story pretty well to begin with. So I remember the first time reading through it and finally getting to the Don Gately chapter, and it felt very much like meeting an old friend in that sense, and I really just like that. He just wants to do the right thing, that he's messed up in his past, he's messed up previously, and just, everything he does is just, he wants to do what's right. I really kind of admire that I think he's a really well-rounded character, that he's got his history, he's got his past, but he just, I really like his motives, I really like just kind of what he's all about.
Yeah, excellent. I'll say that I'm with you, Ryan. I love Don Gately. I love this scene where he's robbing. Is it Duplessis? I'm going to
Something
pronounce
like
that
that.
wrong. And I feel terrible for him in that scene where you just know what's going to happen, and I just feel really bad, and it's like even then he's a narcotics addict and a burglar, right? He's
Hmm.
not exactly totally trying to do exactly the right thing at that point.
Right.
You kind of feel this like genuineness to him.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh man, when he describes like feeling evil for knowing this much about humans, like he knows where the safe's gonna be, doesn't he say like, oh, it's like everything he knows about humans is through thievery, and he feels terrible that he knows.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. And then now in the halfway house with him there, in the scene with him, with one leg up over the couch and trying to deal with Jeffrey Day and Randy Lenz
Yeah.
and footnote 90, endnote 90 with the whole conversation with Day, right? And Day is like doing this, doing this sort of scholarly approach to AA kind of deal, and and Don Gately's like, you kind of lapped me there, Day, man.
Hmm.
Yeah, what I love about that is through work I've had trainings on like how to do like conflict resolution, and there's lots of phrases like I hear what you're saying, yeah, I understand what you're trying to communicate, and I definitely thought of that when I read that footnote, because there's a lot of like I have no idea what you're talking about and I don't necessarily agree with you, but I'm going to keep this conversation going.
Yeah, he's very patient.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I like to. I think it's stuff that's later in the book, but it's not really spoiler. Just sort of his. I don't know if devotion's the right word, but his discipline in the whole AA process, and just that, like the praying to the God that he doesn't even believe in, but he knows that, he needs that routine, he needs that discipline in his own recovery, and in everything that, just little things like that I really appreciate about him.
Yeah. Yeah.
Someone pointed out that Gately is maybe the opposite of Kate Gompert. I think.
Who pointed that out?
I think it was after I wrote a post about her, and I think after that someone said, "Oh, he's the antithesis, opposite of Kate," and I thought, "Whoa!" I think in terms of his ability to continue moving forward, like he just keeps moving forward all the time, shot or not.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I picked up at the in the recent in the part that we would have just read in theory. He has 421 days of sobriety, and it's like the 6th of November, right? If I've got that right. So I'm kind of tracking time a little bit here, just to stay with it, and where he's at in his sobriety and stuff like that. I just find that interesting. Also, I like that it's the other part of his sort of uh, I don't know, genuineness or desire to do his best is he talks about NA a little bit and about how he feels like there's a lot of just games going on there that he doesn't want to play, and that he sticks to this old timers group, the Crocodiles, the White Flag group, and that's just more indication of him like really just trying to do the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think, kind of being on the right track. Oh, and a funny thing in that section, which I really like, is the guy who was the founder of the White Flag group, guy who didn't even use his first name.
Uh-huh. Yeah, that was great.
Yeah. So, okay, so Nathan alluded to this other question, which was basically around, we got a question on Facebook early on where this a woman asked, "Is this a guy's book? Is this a guy's book? Is this a guy's book?" How many different ways can I say that? So I guess this question's for Corey and Jenny. Is this a guy's book?
What do you think, Jenny?
Yeah, so I kind of laughed when I saw that question, because I think to me it depends kind of how you're reading the book, right? If you're reading for plot, then I could certainly see, okay, we've got a lot of guy characters, we've got sports, tennis. There's a lot of quote unquote things that you might typically associate with males. But for me, the reason I was kind of surprised at that question is I find that so much of what I connect to in the book are just kind of like human emotions, right? So these kind of psychological thinking, thinks, thoughts that everybody has, and kind of insecurities that we all have, and to me that's what really connected me to the book, and that doesn't have a gender. So I don't know, Corey, what do you think?
I agree. I also think I'm thinking about a similar thing as you are. That when you're allowed into people's heads, and when potentially like being in Hal's head or Oren's head or in Condensa's head or anyone's, that you're in Wallace's head, there's a lot of feminine qualities about those thoughts. So to me, I think it's interesting that we're reading this right now on whatever time we're reading it, some people for the first time. But I would say maybe you guys could think of other things more than I can, but I also don't think there's a lot of gender separation when you're hearing people's thoughts in the writing. And I think potentially that Wallace is leaving a lot of room for the male characters who maybe in action have a lot of what we prescribe as masculine qualities in their heads. They don't, and even in their friendships, I think. So, nope, not just a guy's book.
Well, and that was my response, actually, was because I didn't really understand necessarily, just because it may be disproportionately male characters, I didn't, that doesn't necessarily say to me guy's book or anything. Of course, I don't tend to think about books in those terms, really. And I'll shoot the question over to Nathan and Ryan here, but I want to first mention that we are at 3/4 past the hour, and I want to say for anybody who is watching, if you'd like to ask any questions, please go ahead and type them into the chat so we can answer them for you. Okay, I said it. Nathan, Ryan, you want to add something about this being a guy's book?
I don't know. I'd never really thought about it.
You got it, that's right.
What's that? Oh, I was just saying I'd never really thought about it in terms of a gender of the book, or written specifically for a male audience or female audience. I don't know if that's my own masculinity and gender bias imposing that, could be, but I don't know. I never really thought of it in those terms.
I think it's probably a question, and I've come across works by people like Danielle S. Eli, who's done some exceptional papers and essays, and even Mary, a giant of postmodern literary studies, who are much better equipped to answer the question than I am. But personally, for me, it's been an approach of, on this reading, trying to understand some of the female characters in Infinite Jest who, on the surface, seem very unsympathetic and maybe don't seem to have been written with a lot of kind of love, and understanding who those characters characters are and what it cost Wallace to get into their heads and write them. That's for me. That's my approach at the moment.
Okay. All right, you guys. I'm not seeing any. It's interesting. I'm not seeing anything in the chat. I wonder if we actually have this working correctly. Okay. Interesting. We do have some stuff here.
Cool.
In fact, someone starts with, "I'm not sure Mark realizes we don't have access to the chat feature." Doesn't know. Well, thank you, Glenn. Okay, so all right, first question. How do the guides feel about the treatment of trans/queer characters? This seems to be the one area where DFW is particularly cruel. Descriptions of Steely and Poor Tony, for example. Thoughts?
I'm trying to remember as the story of Poor Tony unfolds. I'm obviously getting mixed up at what stage we're at and my memory of past reads of the book. I can see it being interpreted as a cruelness, but I would say that Poor Tony is a character that I often identify with and maybe go in between that space of where, like when a little kid is watching a movie and they're like, I'm in the movie, and you like forget that you're reading. And so I think some of the cruelness, in my opinion, is pointing out what Tony feels and is maybe not necessarily who Tony is or who Wallace is trying to project him to be. I only think that because there's a lot going on in his head that isn't as loaded as the visual descriptions of him.
Right. Other thoughts?
Yeah, I would say, certainly the first kind of pictures that we get of that character is very cruel, as is honestly a lot of the characters in the book. Certainly I think the first time we see a lot of characters, they are not presented particularly favorably. One thing I think about the Poor Tony scene is, in the reading that we read this week, to me, reading kind of that withdrawal scene and kind of what he goes through during the very extensive descriptions, that to me feels a little bit more sympathetic, a little bit more humanizing than that first glimpse that we see of him.
Yeah, I think Jenny raises a very good point there. With Poor Tony and Steeply, they are painted originally when they're introduced as very kind in their transness, but I think they're both characters you come to really deeply care about, especially with what they go through. So it's a hard question to answer without having seen their character's full arc in the book. It'd be something I'd love to revisit a bit later in the reading.
That's a good point. I guess I would be curious how to remember, or was it, what was the, did Glenn mention that question, or was it someone else, Mark?
I think it was Alex, actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know if Alex, if you're listening, but I'd be curious what at the stage. Actually, I think if I know it, if it's Alex
Sinclair.
Alex, I know he's read it already. So.
Yeah. So in the interest of time, let's move along to another question. Allison Galensky is asking, do you think footnotes number 61 is an overview to the whole book in the sense of warning us that Infinite Jest represents a stubborn and possibly intentionally irritating refusal of different narrative lines to merge into any kind of meaningful confluence. I know you guys are flipping to think you want to answer this.
The short answer is yes. Wells has a book he loved by David Marks, and the book's called Wittgenstein's Mistress. The essay is called The Empty Plenum, I think, and he talks about interpret me type books, which have all these kind of red flags through them, which kind of speak directly to the reader and are like, hey, think about this. This is a great way to read this book, or this is how you should be interpreting it. And that Jest is one of, I think, many examples of those in Infinite Jest.
Okay.
Did you have a thought, Mark?
No.
You want to go on to?
I was going to go to another question, but if you have to want to add to that.
I was just going to say that maybe the idea that we all, as humans, it's pretty natural to look for patterns and to find them in everything, no matter how confusing things are. I think, except for when someone is suicidal. I think that, I'm not positive, but I think that is one difference. And maybe this is referencing that instead of just referencing the entire book. That we're lucky when we are able to find patterns no matter how chaotic things are.
I agree. It's interesting. The whole idea, what Nathan was talking about this other book by Markson, made me think about the books that are referenced in Infinite Jest. Like there was one in the reading I was doing last night that was by Abbott, and it looked like a great science fiction book about two-dimensional characters from. Sorry, the science fiction book was from the late 19th century. And it was about two-dimensional characters, and I went immediately and looked it up. It was a required reading that the tennis players were reading on the bus on the way back. And I went and looked it up. I mean, I wanted to know, was it a real thing? And it was, and it looked really fascinating. So it made me think that a whole another level of tracking could be, literature. Well, and I could never track the movies, the films mentioned in Infinite Jest, but that's for some people. But I could probably handle books. Let's see. We're running down the wire. There was another good question here. There's some great a couple of great comments. Alex said, Jenny, thanks. I just got the UHID joke. UHID joke. Some people are talking about the video. Okay, so here's a question from Tanya. What new gems have you found in the book this time around? Well, for me, it's pretty much it's a whole lot of things, but I'll give it to you guys who have read this book a few more times than I have. Anything in particular jump out at you?
For me, I think a lot of it's been the vocabulary. I can't remember the exact reference, but I circled it in my books in my other room. But something about something bulging herniatically or something like that. Just those just turns of phrases that he uses that really kind of stood out to me.
Yeah, I'm tracking some of the writing myself, particularly the way he uses cliche sometimes. So that's kind of fun for me as well. Anybody else got something standing out this time? All right, I'm moving on.
Can I just say I'm really liking the conversations that are happening on Twitter and the Reddit. Like I'm starting to get really excited when either one of the guides references one of the other guides, or one of the readers tunes in and says something. I think I'm starting to incorporate the participants in Infinite Winter as characters, and that's pretty fun.
That is awesome. I've been really enjoying the conversations on Twitter, although I've been woefully absent on Reddit, which I'm relatively new to. So I should probably dive in there. I know you've been enjoying that. Okay, 457. One of my favorite comments on the Reddit forum, speaking of which, was about how when you are reading Infinite Jest, you feel there are some things that are put in there, in jokes perhaps, just for you. What did you find just for you? What did you find in the book that spoke to you in that way? Anyone? You.
That's a really good question. Go ahead, Nathan.
At the moment, I think inspired by my mother-in-law, I'm tracking occasionally things that seem British in the book. One thing someone else pointed out on Reddit was Oren eating kippers, and we've just come past the expression cockle warming, which is one that I use a fair bit. I think there's a lot of left-handed stuff coming up as well, which, as a southpaw, I totally get. And probably the other thing are just some of the funny neologisms, like Murat's attempt at English and stuff like that.
Nice. Hal's a southpaw, right?
I think so.
I think I read something about his southpaw serve.
Yeah, Hal and yeah.
Is Steeply?
Yeah, Steeply's definitely one. I can't remember who else, but there are a few.
Okay, time for burning desires, folks. Do we have any final thoughts before we sign off?
Well, if you've made it this far, congratulations, because I think generally this is kind of the threshold period where people say if you've made it this far and you still want to keep reading, you know, you're going to get it and you're going to finish it. So just hope that everybody who's made it this far just hangs in with us, and please do participate, you know, on Twitter and Reddit, because we love kind of hearing your thoughts and what you're thinking as well.
Yeah, I'll add to that. I'm really appreciating the interaction on Twitter, also in the comments and various places. It's a blast having people to discuss this stuff with. So, thank you.
Yeah, every time I've been reading the comments on, like, after the posts, I'm like blown away. I'm like, what? And I feel like I turn into a student where I want to like answer all the questions and form, like, it's very cool.
All right, that's time, guys. Thank you very much for showing up. We will see you in the various social medias, and we will catch you here at the next roundtable as well, I hope. Bye-bye.
Sounds good.
Bye.
Bye.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone.